Hey everyone, and welcome. If you've ever spent any time in Unity, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You find a bunch of incredible 2D assets, you're super excited to build your world, you drag them into your scene, and it's a complete mess. Everything's a different size. Well, today we're going to fix that, for good. We're going to look at the professional way to turn that chaos into a perfectly proportioned world. Let's jump right in.
Yeah, this probably looks familiar, doesn't it? We've all been here. You spend hours, maybe even days, finding the perfect pixel art. You've got this awesome-looking car, these great houses, some really nice trees. You drag them all into your Unity scene and, oh, it's a disaster. The car is literally bigger than the house. The house is so tiny it looks like a doghouse, and the trees, they're basically just little green specks. It's just a total mess, right? It's so frustrating, and it can make your whole project feel amateurish before you've even written a single line of code.
All right, so let's tackle this problem head on. When you first run into this, there's an obvious fix that pretty much everyone tries. It feels like the right thing to do, but trust me, it's a trap. And then there's the smart fix, the foundational method that's going to save you countless hours of headaches later on. We're going to look at both, starting with the common mistake that you really need to avoid. So the obvious fix, right? You just click on that tiny little house, you grab the scale tool, you can just hit the R key on your keyboard, and you just, drag the handles until it looks about the right size. Then you do the same thing for the trees, and you shrink that giant car down a bit. And hey, for a second, it looks like it's working. But this is such a bad habit to get into. Think about it. What happens when you need 10 more houses for your village? You have to drag each one in and then try to manually scale it to the exact same size you used for the first one. It's slow, it's imprecise, and it is just not a sustainable way to build a real game. This is the question that changes everything. Instead of fixing every single copy of an object after you've put it in your world, what if we could just tell Unity how big that object is supposed to be by default? What if you could fix the asset itself at the source so that every single time you drag it into your game, it just pops in at the perfect, correct size? Well, you absolutely can. And the entire solution just comes down to understanding two very simple concepts about how Unity thinks about your artwork.
To really get this, we need to peek under the hood just a little bit. We need to understand the building blocks of our game world. And really, it all boils down to two things. On one hand, you have your art file, your sprite, which is measured in pixels. On the other hand, you have your actual game world, which Unity measures in something it calls units. The whole secret to perfect scaling is just learning how to build a bridge between these two.
Okay, let's start with the easy one, a pixel. We all know what these are, right? It's the absolute smallest dot of color in your digital image. You can see it right here with this heart sprite. If you zoom way in, you can see it's just a grid of colored squares. This heart is 8 pixels tall and 8 pixels wide, which means it's made up of 64 individual little dots of information. When we talk about our car asset, for instance, we know its original art file is 182 pixels wide. That's its size in its own language. Now, this is where things get really interesting. Unity's game world isn't measured in pixels. It's measured in these things called Unity units. So what's a Unity unit? Well, it's nothing. It's completely abstract. It has no real-world meaning until you give it one. But here is the pro tip, the mental trick that makes everything click into place. Just decide, right now, that for your project, 1 Unity unit equals 1 meter. This is so powerful. All of a sudden, you have a real-world ruler inside your game. You can look at your character and see he's 1.8 units tall and think, okay, 1.8 meters, that's a reasonable height for a person. It gives you an instant sanity check for all your proportions. So, we have our art, which speaks in pixels. And we have our game world, which we're now thinking of in meters or units. How do we connect them? How do we translate between the two? Well, that's where the magic bullet comes in. It's a single, crucial setting called pixels per unit, or PPU for short. Think of this as the Rosetta Stone for your game's art. It is the one number that answers the most important question. Hey, Unity, for this specific image, how many of its pixels are you supposed to cram into 1 single meter of my game world? And here it is, the culprit. The reason why your scenes always start out as a chaotic mess. By default, every time you import a 2D image, Unity just takes a guess. It assigns it a pixels per unit value of 100. It doesn't matter if it's a car, a house, a tree, or a tiny coin. Unity assumes that for all of them, you want exactly 100 pixels from the original image to be squeezed into 1 meter of game space. And of course, your assets weren't all drawn to that exact same scale, which is why their sizes are all over the place. Okay, the theory lesson is officially over. Now that we know what the problem is, that pesky default PPU value, we can get our hands dirty and actually fix it.
We know about pixels, we know about units, and we know about the PPU that connects them. So let's use that knowledge and finally take control of our asset scale.
All right, before I just give you the answer, let's do a quick pop quiz. Think about it for a second. We've got our super tiny house in the scene. We want to make it appear much, much larger. To do that, do you think we need to increase that pixels per unit number or decrease it? Your first gut reaction might actually be wrong here, so let's break it down. And here it is. This is the one thing that you absolutely have to remember, because it feels totally backwards at first. To make an object appear larger, you need a smaller PPU value. Here's why. Think of that 1 meter or 1 unit space in your world. If you set a high PPU, like 200, you're telling Unity, squeeze 200 pixels from my image into this 1 meter box. To fit that many in, each pixel has to be rendered incredibly small, making the whole object look tiny. But if you set a low PPU, like 25, you're saying only use 25 pixels to fill up that entire 1 meter box. To stretch just 25 pixels across a whole meter, each individual pixel has to be drawn huge, and that, of course, makes the whole object look much, much bigger. Make sense?
So let's do it for real. Here's the step-by-step workflow. First, and this is super important, do not select the house that's already in your scene. You want to change the original file. So go down to your project folder at the bottom of the editor and click on the house sprite there. Second, with that selected, look over to the inspector window on the right side. You'll see a bunch of import settings. Find that field that says pixels per unit. Third, click in that box. It says 100. Let's change it to a much smaller number, like 25. And finally, and don't forget this step, everybody does it first. You have to scroll down to the bottom of the inspector and hit that big, beautiful apply button. If you don't hit apply, none of your changes will stick.
And boom, just like that, look at the difference. By doing one simple thing, changing that PPU number from 100 down to 25, we've made the house 4 times larger in our game world. And the best part? We didn't touch the scale tool once, we didn't mess with any transform values, we just gave Unity the correct information about the relationship between the art and the world. And from now on, every single time we drag a new copy of that house into our scene, it will automatically be the correct size. This is the clean, professional way to manage your scale. Awesome. So we fixed one asset, but, a game isn't just one house. It's hundreds, maybe thousands of assets. So how do we apply this logic to build out our entire world without it taking all day? Well, this isn't just about a quick fix. It's about building a smart, scalable workflow. And the great news is, you don't have to do this one by one. Okay, get ready because this tip is going to save you hours of your life. You do not have to edit these one at a time. That would be a nightmare. Instead, you can go into your project folder and select a whole bunch of assets at once. Just click on the first file, hold down the Shift key, and click on the last file to select a whole block. Or you can hold down the Control key or a command on a Mac and just cherry pick the individual files you want. And check this out. When you have them all selected, the inspector will show you the settings they all have in common. And that includes pixels per unit. So you can select all of your road pieces, type in 75 just once, hit apply, and boom, they're all fixed. Select all your trees, change their PPU to 50, hit apply, done. This batch editing workflow is a total game changer. And take a look at that. This is the payoff. After just a couple of minutes of thoughtful PPU adjustments, our scene is completely transformed. Everything just fits. The proportions make sense, the car looks like it can actually drive on that road, the house looks like people could live in it, the world feels coherent, intentional, and real. This is that satisfying moment where it starts to feel less like a jumble of files and more like a proper game. Now, one last really important clarification. Does this mean you should never ever use the scale tool again? Of course not. Here's the way to think about it. Setting the pixels per unit is about establishing the correct baseline size. It's your default, your starting point. From there, you absolutely can and you should use the scale tool for artistic variation. You don't want every single tree in your forest to be the exact same size, right? That would look weird and unnatural. So you drag in 3 trees, they all pop in at the correct default size, and then you just scale one up by maybe 10% and another one down by 5%. The PPU gets you 95% of the way there, and the scale tool adds that final human touch. All right, we have covered a lot of ground here, from the theory of pixels and units all the way to a practical, time-saving workflow right inside Unity. But if you walk away from this explainer and only remember one single thing, I want it to be this. This right here is the golden rule. You need to burn this into your brain. To make an object look bigger, you use a smaller PPU number. To make an object look smaller, you use a bigger PPU number. I know it feels backwards, but once that inverse relationship clicks for you,
you will have permanently solved the most common and frustrating scaling problem that new Unity developers face. It's the key that unlocks a consistent, proportional world.
So there you have it. You're no longer at the mercy of some random default import settings. You now have the fundamental knowledge and the practical tools to take complete control over the proportions of your game's universe. You can build sprawling cities or tiny, intimate forests, and you can be confident that every single element is going to fit perfectly within your vision. So the only real question left is, with this power now at your fingertips, what kind of world are you going to build? Thanks so much for watching.